The stars burned cold outside the viewport of the carrier Indomitable. Commander Taehyun stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the distant lights of Mars colony flicker and die one by one. He had been watching for 3 hours now. Each light that went dark meant another section of the colony had fallen. Another 1,000 humans were dead or captured. "Sir, Captain Daeho is requesting emergency evacuation," the communications officer said quietly. "He says they can't hold much longer." Taehyun closed his eyes. He knew what came next. He had known for weeks. "Tell him we have no ships available for evacuation. Tell him to fight to the last man." The officer hesitated. "Sir, there are 200,000 civilians on Mars." "I know exactly how many people are on Mars, Lieutenant." Send the message. 37 years. That was how long humanity had been part of the Galactic Council. 37 years of following their rules, paying their taxes, and believing the lies about partnership and cooperation. The truth was simpler and uglier. Humanity was livestock. Dr. Yuna had found the proof just 2 days ago, buried in restricted council files. Humans were officially classified as a resource species. Expendable. Harvestable. The Vraxian Imperium had come 3 months ago with their massive fleets and superior weapons. They did not ask permission. They did not declare war. They simply took what they wanted. When Earth's ambassador Jiwoo brought the matter before the Galactic Council, the assembled species listened politely and did nothing. The Vraxians had the legal right to harvest human colonies for resources. It was all perfectly legal under council law. On the surface of Mars, Captain Daeho read the message from Taehyun and laughed bitterly. Fight to the last man, of course. There was nowhere to run anyway. He looked at his soldiers gathered in the command bunker. Young faces, scared faces, determined faces. They had held for 3 weeks against an enemy that outnumbered them 50-1. They had fought with everything they had. "Listen up," Daeho said. "No evacuation is coming. We all knew this was how it would end. So here's what we do. We make them pay for every meter of ground. We make them remember that humans don't surrender. We make them bleed." His soldiers nodded. Some cried quietly. Others checked their weapons one more time. They knew they were going to die. They just wanted to die well. The Vraxian assault came at dawn. Their dropships blocked out the rising sun. Daeho and his soldiers fought from building to building, from street to street, from room to room. When their ammunition ran out, they fought with knives. When their knives broke, they fought with their hands. It took the Vraxians 6 hours to kill all of them. Daeho was the last to fall, taking 3 enemy soldiers with him. Back on Earth, Ambassador Jiwoo stood before the Galactic Council one final time. She was tired of begging, tired of pleading for mercy that would never come. Around her, the representatives of 40 different alien species looked bored. This was just another resource dispute. Nothing special. "The colony on Mars has fallen," Jiwoo said. Her voice was steady. 200,000 civilians are dead or enslaved. I ask this council once more to intervene, to honor the treaties we signed, to remember that we are supposed to be partners. The Vraxian ambassador rose to speak. He was tall and covered in blue scales with 4 arms and cold yellow eyes. The human speaks of treaties and partnership. But humans are newcomers, children. They do not understand how the galaxy works. Their colonies occupy space that is needed by more advanced civilizations. It is only natural that they make way. Natural? Jiwoo felt something break inside her. You call genocide natural? We call it efficiency, the Vraxian said. Your species will learn to accept your place, or you will disappear. The choice is yours. The council voted. 40 species. Only 2 voted to help humanity. The rest voted to allow the Vraxian annexation to continue. It was all legal. All proper. All according to council law. Jiwoo returned to Earth that night. She met with the human government leaders in a sealed bunker deep underground. They all looked as tired as she felt. On the screens around them, reports came in from across human space. The Vraxians were moving on the mining colonies in the asteroid belt. They would reach Earth itself within 6 months. We have one option left, the Secretary General said quietly. She was an old woman who had spent her whole life working for peace. Protocol Monsoon. Everyone in the room went still. Protocol Monsoon was the plan they had hoped never to use, the plan they had created in secret, knowing that one day the galaxy might turn on them. It was simple. Remove all restrictions on how humanity fought. Abandon every rule of warfare the Council had imposed. Fight without mercy or limit. If we do this, Jiwoo said slowly, we become everything they think we are. We become monsters. They already think we're livestock, the Secretary General replied. At least monsters have teeth. The vote was unanimous. Protocol Monsoon was activated. Commander Taehyun received his new orders at midnight. He read them 3 times to make sure he understood. Then he called his senior officers to the briefing room. They gathered around the holographic display showing human space and the advancing Vraxian forces. Our orders have changed, Taehyun said. We are no longer bound by Council rules of engagement. We are no longer required to avoid civilian targets or use approved weapons. We are no longer required to show mercy. One of his officers spoke up. Sir, what exactly are our orders? Taehyun looked at each of them in turn. Good people. People who had joined the fleet to protect others. People who believed in honor and duty. He was about to ask them to become something else. Win, he said simply. Win by any means necessary. Show the galaxy what happens when you corner a predator and take away its options. Show them what humanity really is when we stop playing by their rules. He opened a channel to every human ship, every human colony, every human soldier scattered across 12 star systems. His message was broadcast on every frequency, sent to every device. This is Commander Taehyun of the Indomitable. Humanity has been pushed to the edge. We have followed their rules and it brought us nothing but death. We have begged for mercy and received none. So now we stop begging. Now we stop following rules. Now we show them what we truly are. No more games. No more mercy. Now they'll see what true monsters are. The war had begun, but this time humanity would fight on its own terms. The message from Commander Taehyun spread through human space like wildfire. On ships and stations, in colonies and outposts, humans heard his words and understood. The rules had changed. Everything had changed. Admiral Sun-hee watched the broadcast from her hidden facility deep in the Kuiper Belt. She had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. Ever since she was assigned to oversee Project Reaper and the other programs that officially did not exist. Programs that violated every council law about acceptable warfare. Programs that made even hardened soldiers uncomfortable. She activated the emergency beacon. Within hours, her senior staff arrived at the facility. They gathered in the conference room and Sun-hee began the briefing. For 15 years we have been building weapons the council banned. We did this because we knew this day might come. The day when following their rules would mean our extinction. She pulled up holographic displays showing various weapon systems. These are now all operational and ready for deployment. Engineer Haewon stepped forward to explain the technical details. She was young but brilliant, and she had designed most of these systems herself. The Reaper drones are our primary weapon. They are fully autonomous combat units with advanced AI. They learn from every engagement. They adapt. They hunt. How intelligent are they? One officer asked nervously. Smart enough to complete their mission, Haewon said. Smart enough to find and kill targets without human guidance. Not smart enough to question orders. Sun-hee continued the briefing. We also have kinetic bombardment systems. Metal rods launched from orbit at enormous speeds. They hit with the force of nuclear weapons but leave no radiation. The Council banned them because they are too effective at destroying cities. And the biological agents? Another officer asked. Sun-hee's expression darkened. We have several. Airborne, waterborne, fast-acting, and slow-acting. Some kill in minutes. Others take months and cause maximum suffering. We have not tested them on living subjects. We are not sure exactly how terrible they are. The room fell silent. These were not weapons that soldiers were comfortable with. These were weapons that ended civilizations. I need to be clear, Sun-hee said. If we deploy these weapons, we will save humanity. But we will also become something different. Something darker. Are we ready for that? Nobody answered immediately. Finally, one officer spoke. The Vraxians killed everyone on Mars. 200,000 people. They will kill billions more if we let them. I vote we use everything we have, the others nodded agreement. The decision was made. Lieutenant Young-sik led the first strike team. He was a special forces operator with 10 years of experience. He had fought in small conflicts across human space, always following the rules, always trying to be honorable. That was over now. His team of 12 soldiers approached a Vraxian supply world on a stolen freighter. The world was lightly defended, with only a small garrison and about 50,000 Vraxian civilians running mining and manufacturing operations. Under council law, it should have been off-limits. Under Protocol Monsoon, it was a legitimate target. They landed at night and split into 4 groups. Young 6 group headed for the main water treatment facility. The others went to the power station, the food storage depot, and the communications hub. They moved quickly and quietly through the darkness. At the water treatment plant, Young 6 team encountered 2 guards. They killed them silently with knives. Inside the facility, they found the main water tanks. Young 6 pulled out a container of bioweapon agent from his pack. His hands shook slightly. "Are we really doing this?" one of his soldiers whispered. "There are civilians here, families." Young 6 thought about the families on Mars, the children who had died when the Vraxians attacked. "They made the rules," he said quietly. "They said we were livestock. Livestock doesn't get to fight back fairly." He poured the agent into the water system and activated it. The bioweapon would spread through the colony within 12 hours. Everyone who drank the water would be infected. They would die slowly over the course of 3 days. It would be painful. The team completed their other objectives and evacuated the planet before dawn. Behind them, the colony's water, power, and food supplies were all contaminated or destroyed. The Vraxians would realize something was wrong by morning, but by then it would be too late. Young 6 reported mission success to Admiral Sun Hee. She recorded it in her log and sent orders for the next operation. There were 17 more Vraxian colonies on the target list. Across human space, other operations began. Commander Taehyun launched his fleet against Vraxian supply convoys, but instead of targeting just the military ships, he ordered his captains to destroy everything. Cargo ships, medical vessels, even passenger transports, no mercy. No exceptions. Hae-1 deployed the Reaper drones on 3 different Vraxian military bases. The drones were small, fast, and nearly invisible to sensors. They infiltrated the bases and began hunting. They learned the patrol patterns. They identified weak points in defenses. They killed sentries silently and hid the bodies. Within days, the bases were experiencing equipment failures, mysterious accidents, and soldiers disappearing without explanation. The Vraxians grew paranoid and started shooting at shadows. In council space, the other species began to notice something was wrong. Ambassador Jiwoo met with representatives from several species who were concerned about reports of human attacks. "We are hearing disturbing things," a representative from the Cathari Union said. "Reports that humans are using banned weapons, that you are targeting civilians." Jiwoo looked at the alien with cold eyes. "I brought evidence of Vraxian atrocities to this council. I begged for help. You voted to do nothing. You said it was legal for them to harvest us. So now we will show you what harvest means when the livestock fights back. But the council laws mean nothing to us anymore," Jiwoo interrupted. "We followed your laws and it nearly destroyed us. We will not make that mistake again." She pulled out a data drive and placed it on the table. "This contains proof that the council deliberately classified humanity as a resource species, that our exploitation was planned from the beginning. I am releasing this information to every species in the galaxy. Let them decide who the real monsters are." The representatives looked uncomfortable. Jiwoo smiled coldly. She had learned something important. The council species were not used to feeling afraid. They had been the predators for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be prey. Back on the Indomitable, Commander Taehyun reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The Vraxians were pulling back from some positions. Their supply lines were collapsing. More importantly, other council species were refusing to help them. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity was not going to be an easy victim, but Taehyun felt no satisfaction. He looked at the casualty reports from Young 6 operation. 50,000 Vraxian civilians dead from the bioweapon. He had authorized that. He had ordered the death of civilians who had nothing to do with the invasion of Mars. He poured himself a drink and stared out at the stars. "We are winning," he said quietly to himself. "But what are we becoming?" There was no answer. Just the cold silence of space and the knowledge that humanity had crossed a line it could never uncross. The chains were off. The monster was awake. And the galaxy would learn to fear the name of Earth. General Kyung-soo stood in Earth's war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the entire theater of war. He was responsible for coordinating all human military operations across 12 star systems. 3 months ago, humanity had been losing. Now the Vraxians were retreating on 6 fronts. "Show me the targets for Operation Cleansing," he ordered. The displays changed to show 17 Vraxian colony worlds. These were not military targets. They were agricultural worlds, industrial centers, and civilian populations. Under the old rules, they would have been protected. Under Protocol Monsoon, they were all valid targets. Sir, some of these colonies have populations in the millions, his aide said carefully. Are we really going to hit them all at once? Kyung-soo did not hesitate. Yes, the goal is not to defeat the Vraxian military. The goal is to break their will to fight. We do that by making this war so terrible that they beg us to stop. Analyst Minji entered the room carrying a data tablet. She was the intelligence officer responsible for psychological warfare. General, I have the propaganda package ready for broadcast. It is quite disturbing. Show me. Minji activated the display. Images appeared showing the aftermath of human attacks. Bodies of Vraxian civilians. Destroyed cities. Contaminated water supplies. The images were horrible and designed to cause maximum fear. We will broadcast these directly into Vraxian civilian networks, Minji explained. We want their population to see exactly what we are doing. We want them to know that nowhere is safe, that we will kill anyone and everyone until they surrender. Kyung-soo studied the images. They made him feel sick, but he approved the broadcast anyway. Send it. Make sure every Vraxian sees what happens when they attack humanity. The coordinated assault began at midnight. 17 human fleets struck 17 Vraxian worlds simultaneously. But unlike traditional military operations, these attacks were designed to destroy infrastructure and terrify civilians. Pilot Sang-woo led an atmospheric bomber squadron to a world called Vraxis Prime. It was an industrial planet with a population of 8 million. His orders were simple. Destroy every power plant, water treatment facility, and food distribution center. Make the planet uninhabitable. Remember, Sang-woo told his pilots, we are not here to conquer, we are here to destroy. Hit your targets and get out. His bombers swept low over the cities of Vraxis Prime. They launched missiles at power stations and factories. They dropped experimental weapons that released clouds of nanobots designed to consume metal and electronics. Within hours, the entire planetary infrastructure began to collapse. Sang-woo watched from his cockpit as the lights went out across the planet below. 8 million people suddenly had no power, no clean water, and no way to produce food. They would not die immediately. They would die slowly over weeks and months. That was the point. To make them suffer. To make the Vraxians hurt the way humanity had hurt. On another world, Lieutenant Young-sik led his special forces team in a different kind of attack. They infiltrated a Vraxian civilian center and planted psychological warfare devices throughout the city. These devices broadcast sounds and images designed to cause panic and fear, screams, explosions, images of death. The Vraxian civilians did not know what was real and what was projection. They panicked and fled their homes. The chaos allowed Young-sik's team to move freely and plant more devices. By morning, the entire city was in disorder. No one was killed directly, but the psychological damage was severe. How do you feel about this? One of Young-sik's soldiers asked as they evacuated. Young-sik thought about it. I feel like we are becoming the thing we hate. But I also feel like we have no choice. They started this. We are going to finish it. Back on Earth, Dr. Yuna worked in her laboratory on the most terrible weapon of all. It was a bioweapon designed specifically to target Vraxian biology. It would be highly contagious and extremely lethal. If released, it could potentially kill every Vraxian in the galaxy. She had been ordered to keep the weapon ready in case Earth itself was directly threatened. But working on it made her feel like a monster. She was a scientist who had spent her career trying to understand alien life. Now she was creating something that would destroy it. We will never use this, she told herself every day. We are just keeping it as insurance. We will never actually use it. But she was not sure she believed that anymore. The psychological warfare campaign that Minji designed was brutally effective. Images of human attacks spread through Vraxian networks. Civilians saw their cities being destroyed. They saw the bodies of their neighbors. They heard humans promising that worse was coming. The Vraxian military command began receiving desperate messages from their home worlds. Civilians demanding that the war end, families begging for protection. Some colonies tried to surrender, but humanity refused to accept surrenders. The message was clear. There would be no mercy until the Vraxians completely withdrew from human space. Commander Taehyun received a communication request from a Vraxian military officer. He almost ignored it but decided to listen. I am Commander Vrath of the Vraxian Fourth Fleet, the alien said. I wish to discuss terms of surrender. Taehyun studied the Vraxian on his screen. There are no terms. Withdraw all your forces from human space. Return all prisoners. Pay reparations. Those are our requirements. That is not realistic, Vrath replied. My government will never agree to such demands. Then we will continue killing your civilians until they force your government to agree, Taehyun said flatly. We are just getting started. We have weapons you have not seen yet, horrors we have not deployed. Do you want to find out how much worse this can get? Vrath's face showed fear. You are monsters, Taehyun smiled coldly. You called us livestock. You said we were resources to be harvested. You killed 200,000 of our civilians on Mars and felt nothing. Now you call us monsters because we fight back? No, we are not monsters. We are what you made us, and now you will live with the consequences. He ended the communication and turned to his officers. Continue all operations. No mercy, no restraint. Make them understand that attacking humanity was the worst mistake they ever made. At the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were being held. Several species were demanding that the Council intervene to stop the human attacks. Ambassador Jiwoo attended and listened to their complaints with amusement. The humans are violating every principle of civilized warfare, one ambassador declared. They must be stopped. Jiwoo stood to respond. When we were being slaughtered, this council did nothing. You said it was legal. You said we were just resources. Now you want us to stop defending ourselves? No, we will fight this war the way we choose. And if you try to interfere, you will become our enemies too. The council chamber erupted in outrage. Several species threatened sanctions against humanity. Jiwoo just smiled. Threaten all you want, she said. But remember what we are doing to the Vraxians. They had the most powerful military in this sector. Now they are begging for mercy. Do you really want to find out what we would do to you? The threat stopped. Fear had replaced arrogance. The council species were beginning to understand that humanity was not going to follow their rules anymore. The monster was fully awake and it was hungry for revenge. General Kyung-soo reviewed the latest reports and allowed himself a small smile. The Vraxians were breaking. Their economy was collapsing. Their civilian population was in chaos. Their military was demoralized. Humanity was winning, but the cost was visible on his face. He had authorized the deaths of millions of civilians. He had ordered attacks that would have been called war crimes under any normal circumstances. He had turned humanity into something dark and terrible. Was it worth it? He asked himself quietly. The answer would have to wait until the war was over. Commander Bora stood on the bridge of her warship, the Retribution, watching as her prize floated in space ahead. It was a Vraxian capital ship called the Infinite Glory. Her crew had captured it 2 days ago after a brutal boarding action. Now it would serve a new purpose. Are the modifications complete? She asked her engineering officer. Yes, Commander. We have repainted it with Vraxian markings and installed our own weapons systems. Their military codes are still valid for another 6 hours. The ship will read as friendly on all Vraxian sensors. Bora smiled. Good. Take us to the Vraxian defense grid around their homeworld. We are going to walk right through their front door. It was a dangerous plan. The Vraxian homeworld was protected by hundreds of defense platforms and thousands of warships. No human fleet could fight through that much firepower. But a single Vraxian ship returning from battle? That would be allowed to pass. The Infinite Glory, now crewed by humans, approached the Vraxian defense perimeter. Bora watched the sensors, nervously as they were scanned by the defensive systems. A Vraxian traffic controller hailed them. Infinite Glory, transmit your authorization codes. Bora's communications officer sent the stolen codes. There was a long pause. Then the controller responded. Codes accepted. You are cleared to proceed to dock at Station 7 for repairs. Welcome home. Thank you, Control. Bora replied in perfect Vraxian. She had been practicing for weeks. The massive capital ship moved slowly through the defense grid. All around them, Vraxian warships and defense platforms held their fire. They had no idea that the ship was now a weapon aimed at their heart. When they reached the center of the grid, Bora gave the order. Now. Hit everything. The Infinite Glory opened fire on the defense platforms at point-blank range. At the same time, Its hull split open to reveal dozens of Reaper drones that immediately began attacking nearby ships. The Vraxian defenses were thrown into chaos. Ships were firing in all directions, unsure what was happening or who to shoot. Bora's ship lasted only 10 minutes before it was destroyed. But in those 10 minutes, it took out 37 defense platforms and damaged over 100 ships. More importantly, it created enough confusion for a human strike fleet to punch through the weakened defenses and launch a devastating attack on the Vraxian military shipyards. Bora and her crew died in the explosion, but their sacrifice opened the door for the largest human offensive of the war. While the military operations continued, Specialist Yunji was fighting a different kind of war. She was a cyber warfare expert, and her target was the Galactic Council's communication networks. For months, she had been working to crack their security systems. Finally, she succeeded. "I am in," she reported to Admiral Sun He. "I have access to the Council's classified databases. Everything. Treaties, secret agreements, private communications. It is all here." "What did you find?" Sun He asked. Yunji pulled up file after file. "Everything. I found proof that the Council manipulated dozens of species over centuries. I found evidence of war crimes, genocide, and exploitation. Every species has secrets they do not want revealed, and now we have them all." Sun He considered this carefully. "Release everything. Send it to every news network, every public database, every communications channel in the galaxy. Let everyone see what the Council really is." The data dump was massive. Within hours, beings across the galaxy were reading about the darkest secrets of the Council species. The Cathari Union had secretly engineered a plague that wiped out a rival species. The Dravian Empire had destroyed 3 developing civilizations to steal their resources. The Fendari Collective had been running slave operations for 200 years. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Citizens of Council species demanded answers from their governments. Minor species that had been exploited began calling for justice. The Council itself descended into chaos as members turned on each other, accusing and blaming. On Earth, civilian leader Hyun-woo watched the chaos unfold and saw an opportunity. He was the elected representative of the colonial refugees, the survivors of the destroyed human colonies. He had lost his wife and children in the attack on Mars. Now he wanted the galaxy to hear his voice. He recorded a message in the ruins of Mars Colony, standing among the rubble and graves. The message was broadcast across every channel. "My name is Hyun-woo. I am standing where my family died, where 200,000 humans were murdered because the Galactic Council decided we were livestock. They said we were resources to be harvested. They said our lives had no value." He paused and looked directly at the camera. "Now they call us monsters because we fight back. They say we are too violent, too brutal, too savage. But we learned these lessons from them. They taught us that might makes right, that the strong can take from the weak, that mercy is weakness. We are just better students than they expected." He gestured to the destroyed colony around him. "We were livestock to you. We accepted your rules and it brought us death. Now we make our own rules. Now you are prey to us. And we will keep hunting until you understand what you did, until you feel what we felt, until you beg for mercy the way we begged." The message went viral across the galaxy. It was translated into thousands of languages. Billions of beings watched a human standing in the ruins of his world and promising vengeance. Many were horrified, some were sympathetic, but everyone was afraid. Admiral Sun He watched the message and felt a mix of pride and guilt. Humanity was winning the propaganda war, but the cost was visible in Hyun-woo's eyes. He was not threatening violence, he was promising it, and humanity had become very good at keeping its promises. She turned her attention back to military operations. Lieutenant Young-sik and his special forces teams were conducting operations that made even her uncomfortable. They had begun targeting Vraxian leadership directly. Young-sik's latest mission was to infiltrate a Vraxian military command center and assassinate the commanding general. But the orders specified that the assassination had to be brutal and public. The goal was not just to kill the general, but to terrify other Vraxian leaders. His team succeeded. They captured the general alive, dragged him to the center of the military base, and executed him in front of hundreds of witnesses. They recorded the entire thing and broadcast it across Vraxian networks. The message was clear. No Vraxian leader was safe. Humanity would hunt them all. Youngsik felt nothing as he pulled the trigger. He had killed so many people in the past months that he had stopped counting. He had stopped feeling guilty. He just followed orders and moved to the next target. He knew he was becoming something inhuman, but he did not know how to stop. At the Galactic Council, the emergency sessions continued. 3 minor species had secretly approached humanity with offers of non-aggression pacts. They did not want to be humanity's next target. Ambassador Jiwoo accepted their offers and used them to further divide the council. The council is fracturing, she reported to Earth's government. Several species are refusing to support the Vraxians anymore. Some are actively helping us by sharing intelligence. The Vraxians are isolated. What about the major species? The Secretary General asked. They are scared, Jiwoo said with satisfaction. They are beginning to understand that we are not going to stop, that we are willing to do anything to win. They are debating whether to intervene, but none of them want to be our next enemy. Dr. Yuna received a priority communication from the military command. They wanted to know if the bioweapon was ready for deployment. The Vraxians were preparing a final massive assault on Earth itself. If they broke through, humanity might be forced to use the ultimate weapon. It is ready, she confirmed reluctantly. But I must warn you again. If we release this weapon, it will likely kill every Vraxian in the galaxy. Billions of lives, including civilians, including children. It will be genocide. Keep it ready, was the only response. Yuna stared at the sealed container holding the bioweapon. She had created something that could end an entire species. She told herself it was necessary, that it was a deterrent, that they would never actually use it. But she was not sure anymore. Humanity had crossed so many lines already. What was one more? Commander Taehyun monitored the approaching Vraxian fleet. It was massive. Every ship. The Vraxians could spare thousands of vessels all heading for Earth. It was their final desperate gamble. If they could destroy Earth, the war would be over. How long until they reach the solar system, he asked. 72 hours, sir. Taehyun looked at his tired officers. They had been fighting for months. They had won many battles. But this would be the final test. If they lost, everything humanity had fought for would be lost. Send a message to all human forces, he ordered. Everyone converges on Earth. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We end this in our home system, one way or another. The message was sent. Across human space, fleets began moving toward Earth. The final battle was coming. The Vraxian fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system like a plague of locusts. Thousands of warships carrying hundreds of thousands of soldiers, all focused on one goal: destroy Earth and end humanity's resistance. From his position on the Indomitable, Commander Taehyun watched them come. How many ships do we have? He asked quietly. 843 combat vessels, his tactical officer replied. We are outnumbered 4-1, Taehyun nodded slowly. He had expected worse odds. Every human ship that could fly had answered the call. Military vessels, armed civilian ships, converted freighters with weapons bolted to their hulls. It was humanity's entire fleet gathered for one final stand. Position the fleet at Jupiter's orbit, he ordered. We will make our stand there. Every ship that gets past us will have to fight through the inner system defenses. We are going to bleed them at every step. The human fleet moved into position. Behind them, closer to Earth, were thousands of defense platforms, minefields, and automated weapons systems. If the Vraxians wanted Earth, they would have to pay a terrible price for it. Dr. Yuna worked frantically in her laboratory on Earth's surface. The bioweapon was loaded onto 3 separate delivery systems. If the Vraxian fleet broke through and Earth was about to fall, she had orders to launch the weapon. It would spread through the Vraxian ranks and eventually reach their homeworld. Within months, every Vraxian in the galaxy would be dead. She prayed she would not have to use it. But the container sat there ready, waiting. The battle began at Jupiter. The Vraxian fleet swept forward in a massive wave. The human fleet met them head-on and space erupted in fire. Ships exploded. Missiles flew in thousands. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. It was chaos. Commander Tae-hyun directed the battle from the Indomitable. All ships focus fire on their command vessels. Kill their leadership and the fleet will fall apart. But the Vraxians had learned from earlier battles. Their command ships were heavily protected. Human ships died trying to reach them. One by one, Tae-hyun watched his fleet shrink. But they were taking Vraxian ships with them. For every human vessel destroyed, 2 or 3 Vraxian ships went down. Lieutenant Young-sik was not with the fleet. He and his Special Forces team had been given a different mission. They were aboard a small stealth ship that had infiltrated the Vraxian formation. Their target was the Vraxian Supreme Leader's flagship, the Eternal Dominance. Can you get us close? Young-sik asked the pilot. Maybe. They are focused on the battle. If we are careful and lucky, we can slip through. The stealth ship drifted through the battle, hiding among the debris and wreckage. Twice they nearly collided with damaged ships. Finally, they reached the Eternal Dominance. Young-sik and his team used magnetic grapples to attach to the hull and began cutting their way inside. Inside the flagship, alarms were blaring. The crew was focused on the battle. Nobody noticed the 6 humans moving through the maintenance corridors. Young-sik's team had studied the ship's layout for weeks. They knew exactly where to go. They reached the command bridge and planted explosive charges on the door. The explosion blew the door inward and Young-sik's team rushed through. The Vraxian bridge crew barely had time to react before the humans opened fire. In 30 seconds it was over. The Supreme Leader stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by dead officers. He was tall and imposing, covered in ceremonial armor, but his eyes showed fear. You are defeated, he said in broken human language. Even if you kill me, my fleet will destroy your world. Young-sik pointed his weapon at the alien's head. Maybe, but you will not see it. And maybe your fleet will reconsider when they learn their leader is our prisoner. He stunned the Supreme Leader with a shock weapon and had his team bind the alien. Then he activated his communicator. Commander Tae-hyun, this is Young-sik. Mission accomplished. We have captured their Supreme Leader. On the Indomitable, Tae-hyun could not believe what he was hearing. Repeat that, Lieutenant. We have the Vraxian Supreme Leader in custody. He is alive. What are your orders? Tae-hyun looked at his tactical display. The battle was still raging. Hundreds of ships were dying. But if the Vraxians knew their leader was captured, it might change everything. Broadcast it, he ordered. Send it on all frequencies. Let the Vraxians know their leader is our prisoner. Tell them if they do not immediately cease fire and begin withdrawing, we will execute him. The broadcast went out. On Vraxian ships throughout the fleet, commanders received the message and saw images of their supreme leader bound and helpless in human hands. The effect was immediate. Ships began to slow their advance. Some started to turn away. The Vraxian command structure descended into chaos as officers argued about what to do. Admiral Sun-hee saw the opportunity and seized it. All ships press the attack now while they are confused. Drive them back. The human fleet surged forward. The Vraxians, leaderless and uncertain, began to retreat. Some ships fought on, but others fled. Within hours, the massive Vraxian fleet was broken and running. On Earth, Dr. Yuna received the news and collapsed in relief. She would not have to launch the bioweapon.
Humanity would survive without committing genocide.
She sealed the weapon container and locked it away, hoping it would never be needed again. The battle was over. The Vraxians requested negotiations for the return of their supreme leader. Ambassador Jiwoo met with their representatives on a neutral station. She presented humanity's terms: complete withdrawal from all human space, return of all prisoners, reparations for all destroyed colonies, and formal recognition that humanity will never again be subject to council authority. The Vraxian representatives protested. These terms are too harsh. The council will never accept them. Jiwoo smiled coldly. The council has no say in this. You started this war. You called us livestock. You tried to exterminate us. Now you will pay the price. Accept our terms or we execute your leader and continue the war until your entire species is extinct. Faced with that choice, the Vraxians agreed. Within weeks, their forces began withdrawing from human space. Prisoners were returned. Negotiations began on reparations. The war was over. But the cost was visible everywhere. Earth's fleet had been reduced to 300 ships. Millions of humans were dead. Entire colonies were destroyed, and humanity itself had changed. They had become something darker to survive. Commander Tae-hyun retired the day after the last Vraxian ship left human space. He could not bear to command anymore. He had given orders that resulted in the deaths of millions of civilians. He had authorized weapons and tactics that would haunt him forever. He went to live alone on a small colony world far from everyone. Dr. Yuna destroyed all her research on the bioweapon and resigned from her position. She spent the rest of her life working to help rebuild the destroyed colonies and heal the wounds of war. She never spoke about what she had created. Captain Deho had survived somehow, found barely alive in the ruins of Mars colony by rescue teams months after the battle. He was badly injured and would never fully recover, but he dedicated himself to rebuilding Mars, to honoring the memory of those who had died there. Lieutenant Young-Sik received a medal for capturing the Vraxian leader. He threw it away. He knew what he had become during the war. He knew the things he had done. No medal could wash that away. He left the military and tried to find peace, but the nightmares never stopped. Admiral Sun He officially disbanded the Black Ops Division and destroyed the banned weapons programs. But she knew the truth. Humanity would always keep such weapons hidden away, just in case. The galaxy had shown humanity what it truly was, and humanity would never forget that lesson. Ambassador Jiwoo became the first Secretary General of the new Galactic Assembly, which replaced the old council. She worked tirelessly to create a system where no species could exploit another, where power did not give the right to oppress. She succeeded in some ways and failed in others, but she never stopped trying. On Earth, a massive memorial was erected. It contained the names of every human who died in the war. Millions of names carved in stone. At the top was an inscription that Hyunwoo had written before he died of his injuries. They called us livestock. They called us primitive. They called us weak. Then we showed them what humanity truly is. Not monsters by nature, but monsters by necessity. Let this stand as a warning. Never mistake our mercy for weakness. We buried our fangs to live in peace. Force us to bear them, and we will remind the galaxy what true predators look like. Below it was a second inscription, added by Jiwoo. Never again. Not to us, not to anyone. The galaxy changed after the war. The council species were humbled. They began to treat other species with more respect, knowing that even the weak could become dangerous if pushed too far. Humanity became a major power, feared and respected. But humans themselves were divided about what they had become. Some celebrated their victory and the strength they had shown. Others mourned what they had lost. Their innocence, their ideals, their belief that they were better than the monsters they fought. Commander Tae-hyun sat on his porch one evening, years after the war ended, and thought about that question. Had it been worth it? Humanity survived. They were safe. But what had they sacrificed to achieve that safety? He thought about the Vraxian civilians killed by the bioweapon, the children who died in the bombing campaigns, the prisoners who were tortured for information. All the horrors committed in humanity's name. We won, he said quietly to himself. But did we deserve to? The stars above gave no answer. They just burned cold and distant, indifferent to the struggles of the creatures below. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. They had become monsters to defeat monsters. Now they would have to live with what they had done, and remember that the greatest danger to humanity might not be the aliens in the stars, but the darkness within themselves that they had unleashed and could never fully contain again. The war was over. But the questions would last forever.